And I still can't believe that my time around him was kind of like a fever dream. I was introduced to him through Ron Wood of the Rolling Stones, who had done the solo album, and I was interviewing him. And Bowie did no interviews. He had a manager that said, the press is terrible and Mystique is everything. And I had been interviewing Ron Wood. Everybody, all the musicians loved Ron Wood. Like, interviewing him was like a cavalcade of people coming in, like, here's Keith Moon of The Who, and here's everybody, here's Eric Clapton. And I had put my tape recorder away when David Bowie came rolling into his room. And I was just hoping that he wouldn't say, like, I'm here talking to a journalist, which he didn't. He said, like, this is my friend Cameron. And we started talking about music, and Bowie was incredibly electric, and kind of like, I remember him like kind of like a marionette. Like, he had this movement, this kind of jaunty, and it was like really endearing. And he invited us to come to his hotel room for a party he was going to have nightly after his shows at the Universal Amphitheater. And he said, come, you guys come. So we went to the party that night, and nobody outed me as a journalist, and Bowie was playing like soul records that I loved, like the Spinners and stuff. And so I started talking to him about soul music, and we really hit it off, and he was like, come back tomorrow night. So I came back the next night, and Ron Wood said to me at one point, he says, you should interview David. And I was like, don't even say I'm a writer, I'll get thrown out. He's never gonna do an interview. So like, I'm just happy to kind of be a witness to some of this stuff, because he's amazing. And the third night, I went to the party, Ron Wood had gone home, and Bowie came up to me and said, so you want to do an interview? Let me call you up. He goes, don't tell anyone, but I'm going to New York, and I'm going to fire my manager, and I don't fly, I'm going to take a train back here to Los Angeles. Don't tell anybody, but I'll be here for a little bit. Give me your phone number, I'll call you up.
Wow.
And, I just was like, this is cool. But he's never going to call. This is like an elegant, see ya. I think a week or 10 days later, the phone rang in my room. I pick up the phone and it's like, is that Cameron? And I was like, yeah. It's David, I'm on the train. So here's my number. And he gives me his number. Anyway, come and see me in LA. And it was a big deal to leave San Diego and go to LA. But I was like, I'll be there. And so I showed up, and he said to me, let's do an interview. And I don't care who it's for. But you know what? Ron Wood said good things about you. I see you're a guy who's interested in music. Hold up a mirror to me, and you show me as a writer what you see, and you can ask me anything. So I started interviewing him. I went over to see him at this place where he was kind of building. It was just a nondescript place. He was driving around in a yellow VW Bug, and he was starting to write the Station to Station album. And I just started interviewing him, and saw him over the course of a year and a half building this character. And it was striking and amazing, and almost everything he said turned out to be true. Things like craft work and electronic music is going to be the future. Rock is going to get more and more, fantastic, and there's going to be dancing and all kinds of stuff. It's not going to be the little thing that happens now, because there's a young kid in New Jersey that I'm following who's a pretty good songwriter, and he's like has too many lyrics now, but he'll figure that out. I think he'll be a real populist hero. His name is Bruce Springsteen, and just one after another, he saw stuff. He would stage himself in a way so that if you met him at the studio, you didn't just walk in on a guy eating a burrito. He was posed under the right light with like a red light with a blue cap and suspenders and green pants, and and he'd look and he'd catch another light and he'd say hello. And you go, okay, that's Bowie. That's him. So this went on for a long time. He was doing a lot of cocaine, but I didn't. It was almost like it was an installation he was giving me of him building this character. And ultimately, he left to save his life, really, from kind of excess, and I thought brilliant music. And he made his records with Brian Eno and reinvented himself after that. But not to over-talk about it, but like years later, Rolling Stone said, re-interview David Bowie about that time you spent around him. And so I did. I had this conversation with him on the phone. He was living in Soho at the time. And he was like, yeah, I started reading one of your stories this morning. I couldn't get through it. Okay. But by the way, he had given us music for movies that I'd done and everything in between. So, I was like psyched to talk to him. And I said, yeah, you remember when you said that thing about craft work? And I'd read him a quote and he had said, no, I don't remember that. But then, you were talking about, I was like Chris Farley talking to Paul McCartney. Wasn't it awesome when you talked about all of this will be forgotten? It was just like you saw visions and, you thought Satan was in your swimming pool, remember that? And I was like, I think this is all the insane ramblings of a young man on amphetamine. And I'm really happy that I was able to save my own life because I very easily could have been dead. But I'm sure that I made some good music at that time, and I'm glad you were excited about stuff that I told you. It's like, now come on, you remember. And
he's probably mad at you for not forcing him to stop doing cocaine.
Yeah, maybe.
Why did you stop me? Didn't you see?
Why?
I was almost dead.
I was on a track. He had me write a song with him to show me how he wrote songs and everything. And when I hung up, I felt kind of melancholy about it. And then, of course, I realized that he did remember all of it. He just didn't need to or want to or have to, because he'd reinvented again. And it was super poignant. One of the things, the last thing I want to say is one of the questions I'd asked him was, how do you think you're going to die? And he had said, well, I once thought that I would die on stage because I thought that would be, exciting and living out some fantasy of some kind. But I really think I'll have I'm paraphrasing now, but have a thoughtful death, and it will mean something, and I'll make sure it does mean something. And he did exactly that. That is what he did. He curated his own passing because he knew he was going to die. The Black Star album is basically what he predicted in 1976. So quite a visionary and totally warm guy.
And what do you think is the common artistic element that all these people have that makes them so sensitive or special? Do you notice something with Van Zandt and the people you got close to?
It's such a great question, Judd. It's a certain kind of fire, and it's a fire to get something inside of them out, and to say it so that they can kind of release a demon or passion or something. And you tended to see that thing in the people that make some of the greatest marks. There's something burning in there, and it's unmistakable. And I used to love talking to them about it.
Because when you're young like that, and I guess it applies to us in some nerdier way, you're kind of crazy. You think you can do things. You just have a belief in yourself, and so you're dealing with all these young artists, and they're right in the moment of creating themselves. But don't you think there's a madness to your 20s where you think anything is possible? I could become Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, for sure.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, it is a madness, and I like the artists that use their third act with the same kind of passion. This is the whole thing about the fan's journey, and I think you feel the same way from your book. It feels that way, that when you log in as a fan to somebody that you love, you stick with them, because there's peaks and valleys, and if you bail out, you miss some of the great changes that they have, like Carlin. And then it's always so sad, just look at this picture of Ronnie Van Zant. This was Ronnie Van Zant from Lynyrd Skynyrd, who was already becoming one of the great songwriters. Bob Dylan today quotes him. And the fact that he was cut down early in his life with a plane crash with Lynyrd Skynyrd is one of the great unrealized passions, because this guy was on a trajectory to do some of the greatest writing you can imagine. And in fact, his vision of what was going to be the current idea of country music, he had it then. He knew where it was going. And I don't know, that's an ache I still feel, the unrealized life of Ronnie Van Zant.
But you were around, I mean, you were around a lot of death as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, so these are intense relationships, and some of these people were lost. There are people you interviewed, and like Jim Croce,
yeah,
like died right afterwards. So what was that like for you?
It just felt like there was a body count a little bit, like between drugs and faulty planes, and tours weren't set up as beautifully as they are now, and people are just kind of getting where they get to with rent-a-cars that may or may not have been safe. A lot of people died, and it was shocking to me, because some of them, I'd been around them during like a key point in their lives. Like Jim Croce was, I think it was on the day that I was around him, he got his first t-shirt with his face on it. And to him, it was like, oh my God, all my dreams are gonna get realized. I don't have to do these jobs I've had to do to finance my little career as a songwriter. I've made it. And to see how quickly he died was pretty shocking.